Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our Sacred Self-Healing community discussion to discuss controversial topics in order to apply our free thinking, in order to apply facing our fears. In the forecast for October, I pointed out that investigating the nature of our fears and basically facing it is one of our main tasks. And so just like with the series on dark forces, with the series on aliens, I would like to cue this discussion with you guys here. My name is Jona Bryndis, as you all know. And the current series here in 2023 is all about mastering those aspects that come in with change. And we all know that change is something that, well, triggers our ego. It triggers our ego. And whenever our ego is triggered, we are dealing with, well, what are we dealing with when our ego is triggered, guys?
Mostly fear, I will say.
That's
fear.
the first. Yeah. Why? Do you know why?
Yeah, it's uncertain how the future what that would bring.
So the uncertainty. Okay.
Yeah.
So what does let's just repeat this for a moment here within the Sacred Self-Healing community. We should all be aware of this. But what happens with our ego when uncertainty is in the air? When it has the perception of uncertainty, what happens within ourselves? What happens to our way of thinking, our way of feeling, and our way of making choices?
I'll say they narrow. It's difficult to make choices that is good for you.
They narrow our perception, right? Or our perspectives.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'll say so. Yeah.
What else? Just think of it in a very simple way. I mean, you know, when somebody says to you, oh, it's uncertain whether you can keep your job, or it's uncertain if you you know, can stay in this apartment, or it's uncertain if your relationship is going to last, or it's uncertain if you survive this. What happens in us?
I'll say fear.
Yeah, but how does fear affect us? This is what we're investigating here, so that we can apply a way of thinking, a way of feeling, and a way of making choices that is free of this, you know, lower vibratory ego response. Driven by fear, that's right, Gerald. But
yeah.
go through the steps, make it aware to you what happens when just even the notion of uncertainty comes up.
I'll say I'll try to avoid even.
Yes. Yeah, so that's the response to it, right? That's one of the responses. What is fear, guys? Let's just break it down. What is fear?
Basically, is the fear of dying.
Yeah. But there's a connection I need you guys to make. Fear is first just a feeling, and then it's an emotion, and then it becomes a way of thinking, and then it becomes a way of choosing. Understand that. when there's uncertainty in the air, as I called it, when there is sort of just as much as the notion of the unknown. Something is getting triggered in you. We call this fear, but we are not very precise actually how this works in us. We need to really watch this and observe this. It's like, right? And then comes the big emotion, and that is, oh no. Annette, you said that. You immediately respond with avoidance, yeah, or resistance. And then it triggers an emotion in us. And the emotion can go anywhere from desperation to, you know, the fight, flight, or freeze reactions. Oh my God, you know, I'm a victim. I can't do anything. Or, oh, I got to go outside and I got to fight it all and I got to go against it. Or, oh no, I don't want to deal with this. Let me run away from it. This is no matter what topic in your life. That is the ego reaction to fear. Now, just as a counterbalance here, what is a conscious reaction to fear? What would you guys say? How does the process go of being faced with uncertainty, yeah, and dealing with it in a conscious way as opposed to ego way? This is the goal of what we're doing here. This is fundamentally what sacred self-healing is all about. It's about finding ways to deal with things in a more conscious way. Why? Why do we want to deal with things in a more conscious way? Does anybody have the answer right there?
Then you can make better choices.
Yeah, at least, I mean, you know, the individual can still make bad choices, you know, but at least the person has more options, you know. So when we make the unconscious conscious, it shows us more options, it gives us more choices, and with that, it gives us more freedom. But as we know, you know, it's not just done with having more freedom, having more choices. There's also a certain faculty that is needed in us, and that is the ability to discern, right? So with all these different options that I have, you know, which one is, you know, say life promoting, which one is conducive for me, which one is based on love, on expansion, on neutrality, on you know, beauty, creativity, and so forth, as opposed to which of the choices that I have laid out in front of me are based on destruction, separation, you know, resistance, anger, doubt, hate, and so forth. Yeah, so these two faculties are needed. The freedom of thinking and the discernment. Yeah, once you have all these different options, or at least saw all the different options, or become able to see them, yeah, to make good choices. All right, so how do we do this? How are you training this in you? What are some examples, perhaps in your life, where, you know, you used to only react in, you know, your ego ways? Yeah, the ones that we just discussed here in the beginning. And where with increasing consciousness, you were able to make better choices. How do we
What
do?
I'm thinking about when you say so, my old way to handle things was by avoiding doing anything. And now I know that it was not a good choice for me to avoid it. So I know so well that if I express what the problem is,
Mhm.
then it's much easier for me to, when I express it and discuss it, it's much easier for me to handle. And then I can see that then I can better choose what to do.
So you said avoiding doing things, but when you shared the example, I also saw other aspects, not just the doing aspect, also the just facing things, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah,
like you see, and the expressing. So you mentioned, the avoiding looking at things, really,
yeah, yeah. And
and
I hoped it would disappear when I
yeah.
did not look at it, but it didn't.
So, and you gave a beautiful example on how you do this. Okay, so you found out that that's not a good way of making life's choices. So for you, the expressing, the
Yeah,
conscious expressing of, for example, what your fears and concerns are, has
yeah,
helped you to tackle them, has helped you to work with your fears, and perhaps even allowed you to make choices that helped you to overcome your fears.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
What else? What are the things that we practice in order to become more conscious and make better choices?
For me, it have been I have worked really hard with my thoughts, because
Mostly thinking. Mm-hmm.
my critical inner voice and all my thoughts. And I have to be really conscious about my thoughts, because they are so mean sometimes.
Okay, so basically investigating your thoughts.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What are some other ways?
For me, it has in the past I've been going to freeze,
Mm-hmm.
and now I go more into action instead of to prevent that, because I know it helps me. It does
So
not help freeze.
the freeze, can you break that down? What it actually is that is happening inside of you when you freeze?
Yeah, I don't do anything.
Yes, no,
My
that's
my
clear.
thoughts become so clouded and dark that I didn't see any possibility to act.
Okay, so again here, the way of thinking,
Yes,
right?
yes,
But
and
also combination in your case, I just happen to know this, Annette,
yeah,
the overwhelm with emotions.
yes, exactly.
So there's two components there
Yeah,
for you, it's the where your mind goes with things, but it's really the overwhelm that occurs that
yeah,
makes you freeze is through your emotions.
yes.
Now, what have you learned how to deal with this better, or how to approach this, that you can make better choices, that you have more, that you, for example, see ways out or see solutions, as opposed to getting stuck in this sort of desperate and apathetic kind of state?
I've learned to connect with my heart. That's very important. And then I can ease up my body.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not so reactive, and then it affects my thoughts too. I can better see what I'm thinking and choose better thoughts.
Nice.
And then I have learned it's very, very helpful for me to act, do something, move my body at least, you know.
Sorry, guys, there was a helicopter over me. I had to turn off the mic. Yeah, so you're also pointing at the connection between your emotions and your body. So basically, you know this today, that you have almost like a trauma response.
Yeah,
You,
yes, it is.
to when emotions become too big. And so you found out that when you actually connect with your heart, that it allows you not only to choose your thoughts more clearly, yeah, based on who you are and what you want,
Yeah,
but also that you can calm your body down. So this is important, Annette, because many of us have this this hardwire that isn't really distinct enough for us yet to recognize whether it's an emotion, a thought, or a physical reaction or physiological reaction. Yeah, the body mind, as I call it, yeah, where everything is just sort of one big reactive blob, right? And so what you were pointing at, and Annette before you, is, and this is like really important, as any, you know, like no matter what kind of school, you know, we're talking about, that you understand that it is in the distinction, in the actual separation of your thoughts and your emotions and your body. Yeah, you're sensing, you're feeling, and you're thinking, okay, that you increase or, you know, clear up your perception. This is basically what sacred self-healing is all about. Learning, yeah, about yourself, how you function, and ultimately becoming able to understand why you're making bad choices. Instead of beating yourself up for your bad choices, you investigate the dynamics inside of you, okay? And you realize, oh, wait a minute, okay? There are uncontrollable thoughts, there are uncontrollable emotions, and there is an uncontrollable controllable aspect of my physiology, okay, that when they act together, I'm not able to be conscious. So these sharings that you just did here real quick is already enough for us to understand what needs to be done. We need to investigate. Yeah, we need to observe our way of thinking, our way of emoting, and our way of seeing things and choosing. And only through this investigation can we actually begin to see truth. It's a very, very important concept that needs to arrive with you. Yeah, that it is in the investigation, not the doubting and the questioning yourself, but in the investigation and the questioning of your way of thinking and your way of emoting, that you arrive at a place where you can begin to see and discern truth. Okay, and this is just basically the introduction here into why we do these workshops and discussion topics, because it's not really about me trying to convince you of anything in particular. My job is to show you how to approach, especially those controversial topics in our society right now, and we have many of them. Yeah, by the way, if you have topics that you would like to be discussed in this safe environment here, yeah, of the sacred self-healing discussion, which is not open to the public, then please send topics to me that you would like to have discussed in this way, where we investigate this together and allow ourselves to untangle all these ego blobs in us, yeah, and arrive at a higher level of free thinking, yeah, that allows us, as I show this here on the goal for this workshop, investigating current paradigms, yeah, from a more holistic point of view. Now, the holistic point of view is the one that includes other perspectives of ourselves. So if I am, you know, coming back here to our you know, fundamental understanding of us humans, yeah, and you know, basically the form of life. Okay, we talked about the physical, emotional, mental, that those three aspects often come together. Yeah, and the untrained and the unconscious person, they are a conglomerate, they are fusioned together. When we begin to investigate this and you know, do things such as mindfulness, meditation, heart connection, we begin to become able to separate them and much better understand ourselves. The next level to this is to add the spiritual component, the spiritual perspective. Does anybody have a good example for a spiritual perspective on any kind of topic?
Hi, Jona. It could be around religion, like our belief system.
Okay, but how do you know, like any topic, like say work? What would be a spiritual perspective on work?
That you believe in the mandate of the organization.
Yeah, for example. Yeah. If it goes hand in hand with, you know, if it aligns with your beliefs, whether they're religious or not, you know, doesn't actually matter, because spirituality is not really about religion. It's about our values and virtues.
Mm.
That would be the spiritual perspective on a simple topic such as work. What about relationships? Is there a spiritual perspective in relationships?
Yes.
Can
Be
you
again about your values and your beliefs about about relationships, about how you treat people and how people treat you.
Yeah, big time, right? What about food? I mean, I'm just randomly naming a few topics in life that we all have to deal with. Is there a spiritual perspective to food?
Or we get very spiritual about food because we choose different kinds of diets, and then we kind of have a value system that's related to those diets as well.
Yeah. Any other topics in life? Yeah, let's say medicine, health. Is there a spiritual perspective to medicine? To health?
Very much so, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, obviously we are here in a community that has already basically you know, subscribed to the fact that there's a spiritual perspective to everything. Yeah, but it's important to bring this back into our memory, you know, how these things relate to one another. So the next is the etheric perspective. Now, the etheric perspective is something that is often difficult to grasp for people that are not trained in etheric vision or perception, which is something that I train here at transCODES. But even somebody who hasn't trained this here at transCODES can have an etheric perspective. So let me just explain what etheric perspective means. Etheric would be a step up from the spiritual, yeah, a step up from the beliefs. Yeah, this would have to do with higher perception. Okay, so there is the etheric layer around all life. It carries the life force and the template for life force. This can be observed. This can be observed by anybody who actually ventures into you know, the deeper spiritual aspects. Okay, and there we can see yet another level of things. We can see you know, something like the shadow world, we can see something like different forces working. We can see perhaps even on a simple level how something influences the life force of a plant or an animal or a human or a place. Yeah, those are, you know, those kind of things that you guys as energetically sensitives intuitively pick up on. All humans actually pick up on that, and all humans can feel the effects of it. But because there's only very few people that are actually trained in this, they don't really know what it is. Yeah, so it's very common to mystify this a little bit, and to you know, simplify this, we just call this energetic or spiritual. Yeah, so in psychology, anything that is not material is called spiritual. But there's a layer of reality that even to physical reality, yeah, that can be observed in the etheric. And many of you here already have experiences with that. So an etheric perspective, what would be an example for an etheric perspective on something? Let's say work again. Okay, you're at work and you're picking up on stuff. Anybody examples for that? Just to demystify it a little bit. Like you're feeling the presence of something, or you're picking up on things before they happen, or you feeling that, you know, maybe on a spiritual level you're not picking up on it, but on an etheric level you pick up on, like, say, darkness in people. Anybody ever had this kind of perception in any of your life situations where you pick up on darkness?
I often had it in the workplace, less so these days, but definitely when I was working in an office, often in meetings, like you'd see the projection of people, like the difference between what they're saying, but kind of what their energy and the general atmosphere of the room even was saying. It's completely different.
Yeah, that's what I meant with the shadow aspect of things, right? Or the doppelganger, as they call this in psychology. You see a different reality. Yeah, it has to do with things not lining or not matching up. That's usually how we pick up on it at first. And you used a keyword here, projection. Yeah, the projections of people, which is, you know, sort of painting a perfect picture or painting a dreadful picture or whatever. So using sort of mental and emotional capacities, yeah, to create, you know, a mental or emotional pictures in a person. Yeah, anything that has to do with, you know, sort of influencing people, yeah, falls into the etheric. Yeah, because we're using this is a human own faculty. Yeah, we're using our etheric power to project something, and this can be found in all areas of our lives, in relationships. Yeah, keyword narcissistic relationships. Yeah, are drenched with etheric projections. Anything in work life, really, in our today's work life. If you look at just simply sales, for example, sales is an etheric process. Yeah, where a certain picture is being produced. Yeah, and when I say sales, I mean obviously not just the sales conversation, but also all the marketing that is behind it. Yeah, so let's say advertisement. Advertisement is an etheric action. Okay, there's a certain picture that is being created in your mind, and that is being, you know, sort of reinforced through repetition and also through, you know, certain emotions that are being triggered in you. Yeah, and last but not least, you know, we can really add any kind of media and propaganda into this. So propaganda is a very goal-oriented form of etheric projection. yeah, where a certain topic, a certain opinion, a certain emotion, a certain way of thinking is being projected into the collective via mainstream media. And during the pandemic, we had a very good example of that. Because now we're post-pandemic, and all of a sudden, all these projections, if I may just bring this back into our memory, oh my God, we're going to die, they're gone. Why are they gone? COVID is still there. So all this takes place in the etheric guise, yeah, and mostly through the influencing of our way of thinking and feeling. This is all stuff that happens every day. And you can even, you know, throw memes and trends and fashion and so forth into this category. Yeah. Even if you look back in history, you know, how fashion has developed, how certain mindsets have developed throughout the centuries. This all happened through an etheric projection. Yeah, for example, you are a better person or you are worth more if you're wearing Chanel clothing. That is an etheric projection. Can you follow me here? There's
Yes.
there's no intrinsic value to, you know, I mean, maybe the Chanel uses better leather or something like that, you know, the better quality fabrics and things like that. But besides that, it is the idea that you're buying into. So the etheric has to do with ideology. It has to do with the idea that you're buying into. Yeah, even things such as twin soul and soulmate and so forth are etheric projections. They have to do with a certain idea or ideal that is being projected. And then we have the energetic perspective, and the energetic perspective, which I find still is not really a perfect word, but it is more, you know, distinct from all these other layers in that it is more holistic. It looks at all layers at the same time and investigates the overall, if you will, output. So on a material level, for example, the energetic / holistic perspective on, let's say, work would be, okay, so you have a certain work and you have certain needs, monetary needs, and you're doing the work, sorry for the bird, very vocal here, and you're signing up for a work contract in order to make a certain amount of money, but you come home every day completely drained. And over time, this drainage is making you sick, physically sick. The energetic perspective allows you to see that even though you get a good amount of money for something, that overall, yeah, holistically, it's not a good choice. Or take relationships. Yeah, maybe you're like all fired up on the ideal of the relationship, and you like the you know, what other people think of you with the, you know, the person that you marry in the house and what you represent in society. Maybe, you know, this is what drove you to agreeing to a certain type of relationship, but energetically it leads to you, you know, neglecting your own needs, your own wants, and losing your sense of self, for example. The energetic perspective can show us that from this holistic seen from this holistic point of view, it's not a good relationship. Let's take, you know, an actual topics right now that have to do with, for example, you know, climate change that we want to discuss here today, electric cars. Does anybody know how the energetic or holistic perspective on electric cars is?
Well, the narrative is that it's something that's good for the environment, but the holistic view, when you look at all the components, is the opposite. That there are many components that are very energy intensive or resource intensive.
Can you be a little more specific so that we all understand? Not everybody is.
So for example, I mean, yesterday I saw a meme, and it had a photograph of a very large electric vehicle, a station where you could kind of get the electric energy to fuel your electric car, but the energy for that electric vehicle station is completely diesel driven. So on one hand, we're told that electric vehicles are good to have, they're good for the environment, but if you actually stand back and actually look at the whole kind of supply chain and how even an electric vehicle is put together and then used during its lifetime, it's still reliant on petroleum products which is one of the things that the electric vehicle is supposed to negate the need for.
Yeah, you said what fuels our electric cars? What fuels our electric cars?
Well, we're told it's electricity, but where does the fuel for electricity come from?
And exactly, and you're looking at how is electricity made nowadays? It's done. It's made by, you call it petroleum products, fossil fuels. Okay, so something isn't adding up there.
No.
Gerald, I see your mic.
Oh, sorry, I'll turn my mic off. Sorry.
Did you want to add anything to this? Okay.
There's also the waste product, the battery in the car.
Yeah, so the waste of the battery. So what's the problem with the battery?
Yeah, it's very toxic.
Okay, and what does that mean when something is toxic?
You have to handle when the car is finished. You know, you have to split it up. Then you have some products that you have to use a lot of energy to handle.
Yes.
To make it clean and not polluting the environment.
Yeah.
Nobody talks about it.
Yeah, that's one aspect. And there's another aspect with the batteries that nobody talks about.
They're made from lithium.
Absolutely.
Which has to be mined, and it does so much damage mining the lithium.
Yes.
That it completely contradicts the whole purpose in the first place.
Yeah. The way these batteries are being produced. The current energy balance on electric cars, and I know what this sounds like, guys, but it is that it's 50,000 times, or that it costs 50,000 times more energy to make an electric car than it could save. 50,000 times. That's the holistic perspective. Now, are there going to be, you know, developments, maybe technological developments that can resolve, you know, the issue with the toxicity after discarding an electric car battery, or are they going to try to find out different ways to produce electricity? Yes, yes, yes. It's possible. But at the end of the day, promoting something like an electric car in this day and age, with this state of technology that we have, completely defies the purpose. And if you look even further, if you look at the etheric components of that, you see yet another thing. What else is the problem with electric cars besides the energy balance?
The ethics, ethics around, like,
They
Yeah,
cost more as well.
yeah, so the ethics and the cost is what defies the purpose. Okay, but there's another component here that is not based on money, not based on toxicity and energy balance.
the gap between the reality, like the virtue signaling, kind of like if you have an electric vehicle, the
Okay.
perception. Yeah.
The perception, okay, so that's obviously the part of the etheric aspect of it, yeah, that we are being told though that it's a good thing. So we've already uncovered this. There is some kind of schism here, okay? Now go a step farther. You can investigate this with your free mind. Why? Who benefits from this? Why would this be something, you know, that we're being virtue signaled with? Why? What is the purpose of that? Because there's another component to it. Is electricity freely available?
No, there's not enough electricity if everybody has an electric
Well,
car.
it costs more to charge them than it does to the fuel.
Right, so that's yes, Gerald, absolutely, and that is clear already. We've already uncovered this.
Yeah, but
It's not sustainable. Going forward, it's not sustainable.
And worse. It makes us more dependable
Yeah.
and more controllable. Why? How does electricity get distributed? Who's in control of that?
Yeah, it's just turning on and off a switch. I mean, in the UK, there are already problems with not having access to enough points for people that do have electric vehicles.
That's not even the problem.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that they can easily resolve by just pumping trillions of money into charging stations just to get everybody hooked onto electric cars.
Well, in short, if they don't like you, if you don't comply, they can not give it to you. So
Yes.
it's and then when you could also start raising the discussions around like 15-minute cities, and so it controls your movement and your
Yes.
right to roam.
And social credit system can be tied directly to the electricity that is rationed, or, you know, that you're eligible for, or the radius that you are allowed to move. It restricts our freedom. Why? Because of the system that we have. Now, I'm not saying that in general, you know, like I come from a country that uses 100% renewable energies, as you know. Yeah. And technically, if you're just a little bit physically and mechanically inclined, you know, every household can create their own heat exchanger and produce a little bit of electricity, because all you got to do is drill into the ground 1 meter and you got, you know, heat coming out of the volcanic earth. Okay. So it's not that I'm saying that generally it's a bad idea, but the projections behind this are the problem with it. Because at this very moment, the way electricity is dispersed and distributed is centralized. And in context with everything else that is going on in the world, such as, you know, the digitalization of our money, of our access to any kind of resources, the idea of a card that is linked to, you know, digital ID and digital money means that your ability, your mobility, yeah, your ability to move can be completely controlled, as opposed to a combustion engine. What is what are the pros of a combustion engine in regards to freedom and independence?
If you have access to fuel, then you can go anywhere.
Okay, so let's investigate fuel real quick. For most people, I mean, you guys are not chemists, and you know, but you see enough in the news to have heard those kind of things. Okay, there's two ways to run a combustion engine. One is with petroleum products, and the other one is
Steam? No, that's also.
yeah. I mean, there's many other ways to produce electricity. Obviously, you know, steam is one of them. You know, hydraulic, hydropower, heat exchange, and so forth. But specifically something that, you know, anybody could do.
Muscle power? Muscles? No.
Say that again.
Muscles, like the human body or an animal.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yes, we can all, you know, like go back to the donkeys, you know, and have them run in a circle, yeah, or sit on a bike and produce electricity. But quite honestly, that's not going to be enough. So we already know that the human, you know, or the work, you know, the physical definition of work that we can put into producing electricity is not big enough to, let's say, run a house or run a car. Yeah, solar, wind, heat exchange, hydropower, and so forth. Those are all alternative sources for, you know, mechanical devices that can produce electricity. We already know this, but we're talking specifically about cars and mobility. Combustion engines can also run on ethanol. Most of the petroleum, at least here in the United States, is already, you know, not fortified, but you know, parts of it, like 7% to 10%, is already replaced with ethanol. Where does ethanol come from? Does anybody know?
Plant matter?
Yeah, biomass.
Yeah.
Okay, so ethanol comes from, you know, decaying, decomposing biomass. So there's lots of people out there that can do this. There's lots of people actually who do this. You know, theoretically, you know, you could run, you could have a huge compost, yeah, and you know, build your own, you know, sort of ethanol making machine. Yeah, this is alcohol basically. Yeah, so 100 years ago during the prohibition here in the United States, people became very inventive as to how to produce alcohol. Yeah, so this is not rocket science. Yeah, combustion engines can also run on alcohol. All right. And when you put all these things into perspective, yeah, that there's a tendency here to make us more and more dependent on centralized forms of energy. Even if we're progressive, even if we have a solar panel on our house, or, you know, if we use heat exchanger and so forth, okay, we're still forced to feed this into the central grid. So there's a centralization of power going on in regard to like physical energy, okay, that needs to be looked at from a more conscious and quite frankly skeptical point of view. Did you get my point here? This is the holistic perspective. The holistic perspective shows you, yeah, that a dependency on electricity that you cannot produce yourself, at least not in the amount that would be needed, okay, to run a house or run a car, is something that we need to put into account. This counts for all resources, as a matter of fact. This counts for water, this counts for food, all resources. So from an energetic point of view, yeah, we already know that, for example, our food industry does not make any sense, because the amount of energy that is being put into producing, you know, be it fruits and vegetables, be it meat or packaged products, does not add up. It's not sustainable, Abby, as you called it. Yeah, so, you know, these, just an example here. I don't know if you have this in your countries, but in many grocery stores, you can buy pre-cut vegetables, diced up onions, you know, cleaned up cabbage and things like this. The way this is done is that it's, after it's been harvested, being sent to second or third world countries, where, you know, the average minimum wage is like 50 cents or something, and where there's tons of people who, you know, are operating either the machines or actually doing it by hand, and then it's being packaged, filled with preservatives and being sent back to the first world. I mean, mind you, you know, there's at least 2, if not 3 or 4 types of flying or shipping involved. Yeah, there's people involved who cut it all up and so forth, you know, or who operate the machines. I mean, from an energetic, holistic point of view, this makes no sense. And there's only very few people in the world who actually take on this cybernetic. Cybernetic just means interactive. You look at all the aspects, yeah, the physical, the emotional, mental, spiritual, etheric, and energetic component together. Yeah, that's what basically what this this energetic perspective allows us to do. Cybernetic kind of thinking, how everything interacts with one another. So now that we've covered the ground here with, you know, just uncovering how so many topics in our life are actually not sound, yeah, in the way we think about them, because we are not informed yet and don't have enough discernment, yeah, to actually look at the overall holistic perspective. We can already see that, you know, with simple topics like an electric car, yeah, that this is very controversial and not at all like it is being projected in advertisement, for example. So when it comes to the climate crisis, which is the kind of topic that induces fear in us, that we want to discuss here today, we need to apply those different ways of thinking. Yeah, these more cybernetic, these more holistic ways of thinking. Okay, so let's start with the current narrative. Who of you wants to give us a few examples, just so that we're all on the same page here? What is the current narrative about the climate? And I'm saying quote unquote because it's not proven yet. We have not proven that it is a crisis.
Do you mean about carbon dioxide?
Yes. So you see on the screen, the hypothesis is humans caused the destruction of Earth, right? Let's just start there. Do we all agree with this?
That humans caused it?
Well,
Yeah.
no, but the hypotheses, yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the current narrative, right?
Yes, yeah, very much so, yeah.
Okay, and now, Gerald, what did you say? Sorry. That carbon dioxide.
Oh, no, it doesn't matter.
No. Well, that's where we go. Well, no, you got it.
No,
Okay.
no, she just basically repeated that anyway, what I was going to say, so.
Oops, sorry, guys. Yeah, so the current narrative is that humans caused the destruction of Earth. And how do we do that? Well, there are different aspects. The carbon dioxide is the most prevalent current narrative, right? You're right. You're absolutely right. But what are some other aspects? I mean, we're all kind of in the same age group here, so we've been around for a while. What are some other things? I mean, I graduated in the year that Chernobyl happened. At the time, obviously, one of the biggest fears that were spread in Europe at the time were nuclear toxicity, acidic rain. Do you guys remember that?
Yes, I remember very clear.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
scary.
The acid rain is related to lots of different things and industrial chemicals and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, so poisoning,
Yeah.
industrial chemicals. What else? What is the problem here? Let's just put it all together, guys.
Very bad for the health, like kind of causes degenerative diseases, cancers,
All kinds of things, right? All
environmental destruction, like kind of kills the plants, or that at least that was the kind of the rhetoric, you know, causes mass
I mean, it still
destruction.
is, right? It still is. So
Yeah.
the current narrative is, if you put this all together, that our, well, industrial way of living, yeah, let's just keep it as neutral as we can. Our industrial way of living and continued increase in population, yeah, which increases the need in industrialization, causes the destruction of Earth. And there's obviously many different aspects to that. Right now, there seems to be a different projection with every decade, I think, right? It's the poisoning of the water, the poisoning of the earth, the landfills, the acid rain, the nuclear contamination, the food production, and so forth. Yeah, and now, oh yeah, the ozone killing chemicals that are being released. That was also very strong in a certain decade. That was in the 90s, remember?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we have a bunch of things, and it's really overwhelming, really what the projection is here, namely that whatever it is that we do is destructive to the earth. I'm not saying that that's wrong, but the current narrative is that everything that we see as things such as climate changes, yeah, changes in the composition of, you know, in everything that we see that is not going right now, or that is not going how it used to go on the earth, is caused by humans, and particularly the climate change that we're looking at right now. Okay, so humans cause climate change. That is a paradigm of thinking that is called anthropogenic thesis. So a thesis is, you know, just, you know, basically something that isn't proven yet. Anthropogenic means caused by humans. Anthro is the human, progenic means it's caused by. All right, so let's discuss this here for a minute. What do we have in our minds? What is our thinking about this? Humans cause climate change.
Well, it makes us feel very important and powerful because we can do it.
All right, that's interesting.
We think we can do it.
It's almost like a bit megalomaniac, right? Because I mean, the Earth is 4 billion years old.
Yeah, and there's only been records. It's all based on records in the last 200 years or something.
Yeah, or if at all, Gerald, you're making a really good
maybe even
point.
less than that. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's something that I have been pointing out quite often, and there is something about the human mind that seems to only think in terms of 70, 80 years, the lifetime. Yeah, so
for me, I'll say it produces guilt.
okay.
And I can see many really young people are so afraid and so fearful because of all what we are told about. Yeah, I'll say so. And I can feel guilt about how I live sometimes.
So that's one of the effects of this kind of projection.
Yeah, I'd say so, yeah.
Guilt and fear, especially with the younger generation, because obviously for them, I mean, it already started with our generation, right? That we became increasingly aware of environmental issues. You know, anything from resources to contamination to, you know, sort of the changes that are occurring. Those are the effects of it, and this goes back to our initial discussion, you know, how to deal with those kind of fears. And we'll have to have a second part where we want to discuss what we can do about this, because, you know, if a whole generation, the younger people nowadays grow up in that guilt, in that fear, you know, we need to think about what we can do about this. That will be in the second part of this.
Younger people today as well, they're only seeing the story from the last few years.
Exactly. Yes.
They're not seeing all the stories of the last 50 years where there was going to be an ice age, and then there was going to be a big flood, and we're all going to be underwater, and then it's going to be too hot, and then it's going to be too cold again, and then we're going to drown again, and all these sort of things are being recycled and
so true. I mean, we're kind of the old guys now, right? We've gone through many different apocalyptic ways of thinking.
Yeah.
You know, because according to our fears, the world should have ended many times already. You know, and that's you know, obviously a bit sarcastic here, but that's also something that we can observe if we go back into history. You know, that every generation kind of had their apocalypse. Yeah, there was always sort of the world is going to end type of notion, you know, that was used by, you know, be it organized religion or you know, kings and emperors and so forth, to motivate people to do certain things, to get them on their side, to manipulate the way of thinking, even if it was just, you know, oh, the neighbor tribe is gonna kill us all. This is just in the nature of us humans, that we can get mobilized to action, blind action, you know, if a certain threshold of fear is triggered in us. And we already know that. Okay. But Gerald, you're making a really good point here, that a lot of times when it comes to the perspectives and the way of thinking about things, that the time frame with which we look at things can be skewed, or can skew our opinions. If we just look at a certain, you know, developmental stage, for example, you know, we often lose the bigger perspective, in recognizing that, you know, this might just be a certain stage of a grander or bigger development that is there. That's in general a limitation that the human mind has. So the human mind is not capable of imagining something that is longer than, let's say, 70, 80, maybe 90 years, because that's our lifespan. In the old days, it was much shorter because the lifespan was much shorter, but we could only look as far as that. We can also only look as far back as that. So when somebody's 20, obviously, you know, they can imagine, you know, something like 2050 or something, but in reality, because they're only 20 years old, you know, those timelines are very difficult to fathom. And when it comes to discussions around climate, what is the kind of time frame that we should look at? I mean, is it enough to look at the last 150 years since the beginning of industrialization? Or is it enough to look at, you know, let's say the last 10,000 years since humans have settled, yeah, in agriculture and started building, you know, villages and cities and so forth? Is that enough?
No, I would say as long back as possible.
As long back as possible.
Yes, because there has been climate changes several times, as
Yeah.
we know.
So this would be a more scientific approach, right? To say, okay, well, the Earth is approximately 4 billion years old. There is a certain amount of data that we can retrieve, you know, through carbon dating, through, you know, reading fossil repositories and so forth. So it's we're not that blind anymore. Yeah, we can, you know, measure things like temperature shifts and shifts in the environment, such as the foliage, the fauna and the flora, you know, pretty far back nowadays. So if we really want to get the holistic picture here of what causes climate change, wouldn't it make sense to first go back into history and look at the overall cycles, rhythms, and dynamics of climate change? Yes, that would make sense. And you're absolutely right, Annette. We've already, as far as we know, from a scientific point of view, we've already had 5 major mass extinctions on this planet. Mass extinction of plant and animal life, even before humans were even on the surface. 5 mass extinctions. And yet we're here. And the Earth is still here, and plants are still here, and animals are still here. So, I mean, that's just, you know, it's not really helping our mind to get off the immediate fear projection, but at least, you know, it gives us a little broader perspective. Okay, things happen. Okay. So the goal here for this first discussion with you guys, this part 1 of this discussion, whether we have a climate crisis at all, is to look at this broader perspective and investigate, you know, those different factors in the past, yeah, that that influenced, yeah, the weather cycles and the extinction cycles on this planet. What do we know, right? Okay, so if we look at, and this is, you know, here more or less a lecture for you guys, just, you know, me sort of bringing in, you know, the current state of science and what we know. Okay, so, and the preface to that is that, you know, looking at the mass extinctions, the 5 big mass extinctions, that if you believe it or not, the main cause for mass extinction on a pure scientific point, from a pure scientific point of view, are invasive species. 60%, based on what we know today, of why there was mass extinction was caused by invasive species. Now, this can happen on a level of, you know, bacteria, fungi, plants, or animals. Invasive species. Now, invasive species, if you picture this, is basically something that starts taking over, yeah, the existing ecosystem, and with it, you know, brings it out of balance, and, you know, leads to it no longer being sustainable. The invasive, you know, the occurrence of invasive species, which, by the way, you know, many ecologists are warning of this right now, because we're seeing this anywhere in the plant and animal world, can have to do with a lot of different underlying causes such as, you know, pH, the biochemical composition of the earth, of the you know, of the soil, of the water, the hours of sunlight, the composition of bacteria, of fungi in the soil, and many more, you know, external conditions that can lead to certain species to overdevelop, yeah, to develop an excess, and with it then kill other species that are needed for the ecological balance. Yeah, so this is something that we can observe everywhere, anywhere, even within our own body. Anybody who's ever had issues with Candida, for example, which is a fungus that lives in our gut and that is needed, you know, to maintain a certain balance in our gut flora, yeah, that can overgrow and thus create all kinds of health issues. Yeah, anything from, you know, just, you know, sort of digestive issues such as Crohn's disease, celiac, irritable bowel syndrome, or polyps, or, you know, issues with colon and, you know, with the actual intestines, with the actual glands, with the actual organs that are then, you know, over time affected. Yeah, so anybody who's ever heard about this must understand that, you know, everything here on this planet, including our own body, is a very complex ecological system or ecosystem. And when one thing, such as Candida, for example, which is benign, you know, in and of itself, but if it starts overgrowing in our system, mostly through eating too much sugar, you know, refined sugars, refined carbohydrates, and overall acidic pH levels, okay, it can literally kill your system. What's the remedy for that? Well, eat less sugar, you know, and drink more water. Yeah, so we all are continually, you know, interacting with very complex ecosystems, and on all these different levels, yeah, whether we look at ourselves, our interaction with other people, at human interaction with plant and animal life, and even the animal life and the plant life interacting with the overall, you know, climate in our planet. We know that the rainforest plays a key role in our wind and rain, you know, in our water cycle. We know that the Gulf Stream plays a major role in the climate of the Northern Hemisphere. We know that the magnetic pole plays a major role in regard to a certain sort of climate pockets and so forth. So there's many things, all right, that impact the balance, that impact, you know, the ecosystems on any levels. But here on this slide, you can see sort of summarize the main causes for climate change. Yeah, so this is just based on climate change. The main cause over the history of the planet are volcanoes, and the how do you call this? The release of you know, gases that come from the inner of the Earth into the atmosphere, including the dust particles, the ashes. All right, so we know some of these famous examples, such as Pompeii, you know, that led to the extinction of a whole entire city overnight, basically. You know, we in recent history remember the eruption of a volcano in Iceland that created the ash clouds that took down all our air of aviation systems and navigation systems. So volcanoes are the main cause, yeah, in the history of the planet to lead to climate change over the course of, you know, perhaps tens of thousands of years, but they are known to be the main causes, along with the earthquakes and tectonic movements of the Earth's crust itself. Yeah, so there is a lot there that can be studied. My home country, Iceland, is one of those places where a lot of that kind of research has been going on for the last 100 years, because it is such a young, geologically young place where you can observe all that in action. Yeah. Then the second or third cause for drastic climate changes in the history of the Earth is meteorites and asteroids. Okay, yeah, those are the biggest influences on climate changes, like massive climate changes, not just temporary, but massive climate changes. Then another thing, and I did a lecture on that, 5 years ago, how the sun actually influences the Earth's climate, are solar flares and the solar magnetic field. So when it comes to looking at it from a cosmological perspective, here in our solar system, all planets have an effect on the human, on the Earth's sort of body. Okay, the sun has the biggest impact on our actual climate. Okay, on the winds, yeah, and the radiation and the magnetic streams that we have in our atmosphere. And so one could say that, the sun, the interaction between the Earth and the sun is actually, and is, by the way, something that we as in, our current state of science, where we don't have a lot of data yet. All we can do is measure it, ever since we can measure it, which isn't very long, yeah, and then infer, what these solar flares do. Currently, we live in a time of a very low solar activity, but when it comes to like the shifts and changes there, one can observe that there is a shift and change every 11, 12 years. We also know that the other planets in our solar system influence aspects of our climate, and one that we all know is not a planet, but our moon, for example, influences the movement of water, and with it, of course, ebb and flow, but also, the tide, and also, things in our human bodies and the human emotions and way of thinking. So it's very complex, actually, when you start looking at the main factors that are influencing the Earth's climate over or since the beginning of the existence of Earth. Furthermore, and this is also becoming more and more subject to scientific study, is the Earth's magnetic field. Okay, the Earth's magnetic field is currently undergoing a very rapid change, and that is something that affects the magnetic pole. Many of you know that the North Pole, yeah, our magnetic north of our planet, is constantly moving, yeah, and the speed in which it is moving currently has moved the North Pole, yeah, the magnetic North Pole, from what used to be Canada 20, 30 years ago, all the way to Siberia now, westward. And there are many scientists out there warning for something like a pole shift, yeah, which would have drastic effects on our climate. Yeah, then here more for the northern hemisphere, the Gulf Stream, also something, yeah, that is responsible for our relatively mild climate here in the northern hemisphere. It would be much colder if there was not, this 16 centigrade stream throughout the North Atlantic on both sides, the American and the European side. And if that, and there's also a lot of indication that there are changes, if that changes, all right, we could be heading into an ice age. From a pure scientific point of definition, we are actually in an ice age right now, because the definition of an ice age is that both polar caps are covered with ice. Yeah, then the whole ice cap discussion, also really depends on the time frame that you look at things. If you look at the ice sheets in Greenland or the Antarctic, you will see that yes, there is a constant sort of in and out. There's a constant, growth and melting, and the overall perspective shows that there has been much a bigger sort of melt of those kind of ice sheets on our planet way before humans even existed. Yeah, and even in like say current history, if you go back to times in the 60s, if you go back to that's my favorite point of perspective is going back into the end of the 19th century, before, like right when industrialization started. You can see that we've had phases where we had much higher temperatures than we have right now. So and adding to this, we also know that there are new technologies out there that are currently still not disclosed to the public, that are called atmospheric heaters. If you are, cruising in sort of conspiracy theory news, you'll see a lot of those kind of cues, that there's like sort of quote unquote energy weapons, direct energy weapons, DEW, okay, that are being discussed right now in conjunction with the fires in Maui, with the fires in Canada, and with some of the earthquakes, where there's like weird atmospheric phenomena that were observed right before those kind of fires or earthquakes occurred. And the conspiracy theory is that they're being caused by these direct energy weapons that our governments are not disclosing to us, like basically laser beams or plasma beams, if you will, and that they are experimenting with this, and that also leads to heating up of our atmosphere. Now, those would be caused by humans, obviously, but these factors here, the main contributors to climate change on the planet Earth, just from a pure physical science perspective, none of them are anthropogenic. None of them are caused by humans. This is very important, to free up your way of thinking. I'm not saying that humans aren't contributing to poisoning the earth and, and destroying, natural diversity, and maybe inadvertently creating, invasive species or a heating up of the atmosphere. There's theories out there from Nobel Prize winning scientists that say that, our industrialization, and the excess of carbon dioxide produced by our machines, and everything that comes with it, our industries, actually prevented the mini ice age that was due to happen in the late 19th century. There's actually very compelling evidence for that. That our production of CO2, which by the way only consists of 0.4% of the atmosphere, and which is needed for our plants to produce oxygen. So, as a chemist, obviously my relationship with CO2 is a little different than for most people, because I understand that CO2 is really a fundamental element or molecule that provides life on this planet. Okay, so to vilify CO2 is very single-minded and quite frankly, very uneducated. Okay, especially in conjunction with, the big extortions here of CO2 through volcanoes, earthquakes, tectonic movements, meteorites, solar flares, and the Earth's magnetic field. Because what we produce is nothing compared to that. Nothing. Okay, so this critical kind of look, even from a pure physical science perspective, okay, already indicates to us that there might actually be more projections, and these etheric things that I mentioned earlier, the influencing of the way we think about things than we think there are. If we now add the spiritual perspective to this, yeah, who would have thought? Yes, there's also a spiritual perspective on climate change. We yet see a whole other perspective. There's many theories out there, and I know at heart, many of you here in this audience actually feel this and almost like agree to this, is that the Earth itself is a conscious organism, is an intelligent consciousness itself. We're naming it Gaia in respect to its own consciousness. Yeah, so what if, Gaia decides to burp? Okay, yeah, and change everything, from one day to another. I'm joking about this, just to show us how we are not actually putting these kind of things into perspective. There's actually an indication that the Earth's surface rises and falls every 12,000 years. Every 12,000 years, there is a natural rise and fall of the Earth's crust. You could call this Gaia's breathing. Yeah. So what if the rise in sea levels isn't caused by CO2, but by the Earth itself breathing out? Every 12,000 years, this has been recorded. You can also, of course, go into the mythological aspect of that, and remember how most of the religions and esoteric teachings are actually around the sun and the earth, yeah, interacting with another in form of gods, in form of certain dynamics that are happening between them. Yeah, and the sun being sort of the father of all the gods, Zeus or Jupiter or Ra. Those are all, the sort of the how can I say, the highest hierarchy of planets, yeah, represented in these godheads, okay, that are interacting with one another. Maybe that's not so dumb after all. Yeah, if we understand the Earth itself as a conscious organism, okay, then we kind of have to have a bit more cosmological perspective here and recognize that the other planets and our sun herself might also be intelligent cosmic beings, spiritual beings. I'm just throwing this out there at you because when we enter the spiritual perspective, we have to put these things into account. And what if there are yet other spiritual forces, yeah, in a more sort of multidimensional, from a more multidimensional, transdimensional perspective, yeah, that we call dark forces that are interacting as well? There is, in this relatively small community here in the world, but of people who actually have etheric and spiritual vision, there is a big warning out there, namely that, the dark forces, the hindering, the adversarial forces, that they are messing with the Earth's magnetic field through these black magic cult kind of ceremonies, okay, influencing, the energetic atmosphere of the planet Earth, hindering us in our divine natural evolution of consciousness. That's another layer.
Isn't that what CERN is kind of supposed to be involved in that sort of thing?
Sorry, I didn't hear CERN.
The CERN in Switzerland,
The
the
CERN.
Hadron
This is,
Collider.
yeah, so this is the physical scientific point of view,
Yeah.
right? So then you can say, yeah, maybe these sort of black magic lodges, have brought CERN, the Hadron Collider into the game. Yes, and then you investigate this, and if you guys have been present here with for the discussion on dark forces, then you already know what kind of dark force that is. The machine world, the materialistic thinking.
They've carried, like they've done some very strange rituals in that place as well.
Yeah.
Dressing up in strange costumes and all this bizarre behavior.
Well, I mean, it's all everywhere in the media right now, and it's like almost everything, anything from Super Bowl to, a big sort of arena filling concerts and so forth, or, it's a new trend in Hollywood, to make everything a satanic ritual. Okay, so maybe that's what's causing climate change. But with the Hadron Collider and with some of the aspects that you brought in with CERN, which is an actual scientific materialistic, a physical matter kind of manipulation, that's not spiritual. Okay, that's physical.
No, it's a physical manifestation of
right. What are the spiritual
forces? Yeah.
Yes, what are the spiritual forces behind those physical manifestations? That's exactly what my impulse here for you guys is. What's delivering the impulse for those physical manifestations? And I know deep down on some level, you guys all have your own personal conspiracy theories, and you believe that there's something like a battle in heaven going on, dark forces versus light forces. Yeah, and somehow we can pick up on that within ourselves. But you need to adjust your way of thinking to this, what this actually means, guys. We are much further developed than 2,000 years ago, where everything was just because, a god was in a bad mood, did something. No, that's not how this goes. There is much more to all of this, guys. So if you go into this energetic, holistic way of thinking, which includes the spiritual and the etheric, you suddenly see a whole different picture. And this is basically where I want to end my presentation, because I see my main purpose or job here in delivering these impulses for you. And I would like to then refer to part 2, where I would like to discuss some of your thoughts, some of your suggestions as to, how we can counteract this. Here right now, we have a little bit of time left. I have 10 minutes left where I can maybe answer questions, or where you can comment on things, or even just give me some feedback on what this presentation here and this discussion that we had here so far has triggered in you, or what it is starting to do within yourself. How do you feel about the information that I have been presenting to you here in the last hour and a half? Does anybody want to share?
Hi, Jona. This is Abigail. For me, it reinforces a lot of the things I've been thinking. So it kind of feels comforting to have like a presentation and kind of discussion about these things, because it makes me feel less alone. And yeah, I mean, I think the idea of like, you know, how can we communicate this to other people, like for example children, younger people that have never had the opportunity to see anything different as well. It's like taking away the fear of it, like being like, I think you've presented well, like the actual kind of where our real concerns might lie, and what we actually do have control over, and what we don't. I think that's useful as well.
So it took a little bit of that sort of fear cloud. It cleared up a little bit of your fear cloud.
Yeah, because definitely.
Because I mean, ultimately, that's my goal, right? Apart from, you know, sort of helping you apply your mastering, your thinking, your feeling, and your choosing, you know, is to help you, especially in this month, you know, to investigate the nature of your fears, yeah, and through that investigation, become able to discern more and get out of that ego reaction, yeah, which is basically what is being played on by mass media and propaganda in these days. Yeah, it's very heavy etheric overlay. You know, I often call it mind control. Yeah, in influencing your opinions and your beliefs, you know, through the inner ego reaction. I'm not saying that, you know, there is no climate crisis or that there is no climate change or anything like that. I'm not a climate denier, but I am trying to deliver an impulse here that allows you to discern more. So I would love to hear some other voices. I can also imagine that maybe my presentation has made you even more fearful. Anybody here who has become more fearful? Because contrary to what Abigail just said, I basically showed you all the things that we are not in control of, that are not caused by humans.
I'll say for me, I'm sitting here and saying, whoa, it's much bigger than I had thought about. No, I don't feel more fear. I'm just thinking about, because there's also a lot of anger from the young people. And because I think that, yeah, because of the mind control, they are personal. They think that I do something wrong, and perhaps we do, but it's not all of it.
Yeah.
I like this presentation, because I can see that I have not thought about all these things, and I like that.
Yeah, and you guys can all come up with your own conclusions, but you know, if this is what it did to you, Annette, then you know I did my job, okay, to inspire you to look at the larger picture. One aspect of what you just said is I want to emphasize that, or I want to underline that, because that's something that I would like to discuss in the second part. The anger and the fear that you mentioned in the younger generation. You're a social worker, so you deal with this every day. Which part of these inner forces, the dark forces and the light forces in us, do anger and fear and hatred feed? Just think of it in terms of consciousness level.
The mental and emotional.
Yeah. The lower part, the darker part of us. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So who benefits?
Controllers.
Yeah. Dark forces do. Yeah. How do we bring about better solutions, better choices. We talked about this in the beginning. First and foremost, by moving into truth. We got to look at what is. And then we harmonize by going into our heart and finding ways that are, more conducive for life on all these different levels. Body, mind, emotion, spiritual beliefs, etheric aspects, and the holistic energetic aspect of our decisions. So if there is a notion among humans, and again, it's very easy to play on our ego. It's very easy to play on our fears. Annette, you said that, Annette, with one, and ultimately it's all the fear of death. Yes, we all have the fear of death. So all I got to do if I want to control you is to emotionalize you, bring your body into a trauma response and get your mind spinning that you're going to die tomorrow, right? That's all I got to do. And off you go. Get caught in your dark forces, in your own inner darkness. When you apply your spiritual, etheric, and energetic perspectives, guys, you can see this very, very clearly. Take one of the most current events here, that we're observing with war in certain parts of our world right now. What is being strengthened through the current narratives?
Attack.
Yeah.
That's an holistic perspective, guys. Because you already know that any kind of choice, any choice that is based on down here sucks. Will not lead to peace, will not lead to joy, will not lead to love, will not lead to healing. Any choice down here.
Jona, I don't understand all of it, but I'm thinking now, why is it good to have us believe in that?
Yes, that's the right question. That is what needs to be investigated.
Yeah.
What's the purpose of it?
Yeah.
Where does it drive us? What kind of choices are we making based on that? Who benefits? That is the right question, Annette. Thank you. This is the purpose of higher consciousness, guys. The purpose of higher consciousness is not just some abstract ascension or enlightenment. The purpose of higher consciousness is becoming able to make better choices. Choices that are more harmonious, that bring about more life, that bring about more love, that bring about more creativity, more beauty, and more expansion. What is the purpose of restricted thinking, fear-based thinking, hatred, doubt, anger, and fear? Destruction. That is the application of spiritual work. You ask those kind of questions. Because if you don't ask those questions, quite frankly, and this is my criticism to the current narrative, you are falling for an ideology. None of the discussion currently about climate change are scientific. They're based on an ideology, on a thesis that is not even investigated. Everybody just buys into it. And the best example is our youth. So higher consciousness expresses in investigating things through the different vibrational layers and recognizing and therefore becoming able to discern the kind of choices that we as a collective are being basically steered into. So these are all things that have to do with the paradigms of thinking. There's a two-part workshop series about mastering your thinking. Then there's another two-part series about mastering your emotions, and another two-part series, actually a four-part series about mastering your choices, including your will and your needs and wants and so forth. These are instrumental. Without learning how this works within ourselves and asking the right questions, there is no increase in consciousness. And right now, our collective is being steered into a lower consciousness. But at the same time, and this is the interesting part and the duality of all of this, is that it inadvertently leads to an awakening of consciousness in people. Just as we have been able to observe since 2019, at the arrival of the pandemic narrative. Why do I say 2019? Because I pinpointed it. Go back to the energy forecast in 2019, okay? And I talk about the bifurcation, and I talk about the paradigm of thinking, and I talk about the health issues and the fears that are being, that are coming. Because in the etheric, you can see it. And what it has done to us is that many people, at least 5 billion people on this planet, made very bad choices for themselves, okay? And at the same time, now, 4 years later, the beginning of a huge awakening. An awakening to the fact that, oh, maybe there is a manipulation going on. Maybe we are all mind controlled by the media. And it's ongoing. So it is, and this is really important that you remember this, because even though I'm pointing out the nature of darkness and how dark forces work, and I'm basically pointing out that this is a bigger issue. Climate crisis, the climate change is a bigger issue. It's actually a cosmic issue right now. Okay, even though I'm pointing out, the growing dark forces, I am also sending the message along with that through the confrontation with untruths, through the confrontation with unfreedom, the restriction of mobility and the restriction of our thinking, and through the confrontation with unlove, coldness and materialistic paradigm, we as a collective are awakening. Is it a pleasurable experience to awaken to truth? No. Which part in us does not want that? Which part in us works against that? Against awakening to truth? Against awakening to freedom, against awakening to love? Which part of it in us works against it? That's where we started our discussion, guys.
Our egos.
Yeah. Is our ego dark? No. Our ego is just a baby part in us, that doesn't know anything. It's just afraid of bad things happening. Okay. That's why I've dedicated my life's work to it, helping people to transcend their egos, to work with it and to raise their consciousness above the level of ego. Because that's the only way how you can actually learn to tackle your fears, how you can learn to strive even when you have to face an uncomfortable truth, be it on your personal level, your relationship, your work, your lifestyle, whatever, or on a collective level. Yes, we are dealing with the emergence of dark forces. But these dark forces also, from a larger cosmological intelligent point of view, serve a purpose. And that is to lead us into higher levels of consciousness. So if you can arrive at that place where you recognize that things have to go through its motions, and that at the end of the day, it's only a matter of you either complying or becoming complicit or making your own stance, choosing, the force in you that you want to feed, then you have arrived in higher consciousness. And just here as a last remark, how dark forces work through you. Dark forces take your refusal or your ignorance to say no as a yes. Let me repeat this. Dark forces take your refusal or your avoidance looking at truth. You're not wanting to look at it and not saying no to it as a yes. And how do we say no? By saying yes to the light. In that moment where you make that choice, and this is the bifurcation that, I've been pointing out for many years, where you recognize that you are, an I am, a conscious soul being, that exists due to the power of, the source of all existence, which is the cosmic intelligence, God, source, divine. All right. And that is who you are. And that you have that already. Then you don't need to be afraid of dark forces. Because dark forces don't have that. And what they're trying to prevent, that's why I like calling them hindering forces or adversarial forces, like Steiner calls them. What they want to prevent is you becoming aware of the power that you have as a conscious soul being. So it's all about, spiritual initiation and you basically, becoming aware of who you truly are. And I call this consciousness work. So with this, I would like to leave you here for this first part of our discussion. It's wonderful having this discussion with you here and hearing you beginning to more freely think, changing your perspectives, and executing, applying your higher consciousness. This is the purpose of this spiritual and consciousness work, guys. This is what it's all about. So you can make choices that are life supporting, that are love embracing, that are harmonizing, instead of making choices based on fear, on doubt, or hatred. I love you guys. Stay conscious, and I'll announce the second part with the November calendar.